Hi. Now I'm going to read the letter or the introduction to the letter that I wrote to Mark White Lewis, the Division Chief of Global Partnership at the Institute for Capacity Development at the IMF, International Monetary Fund. This was February 27th, 2018. So, this is almost about 2 years after Trump entered, or well, no, 1 year after Trump entered. I mean, you know, I know my packages of letters, whether it be to the Spanish government when I started, then followed up with the State Department, the White House, U.S. Congress. I mean, you know, okay, this is 15 years. I know for everybody, 5 years, this is done deal. Oh, no. This is just a continuum. So, you know, whatever. I'm so exhausted at this point. And I'm watching the, Supreme Court, stuff about Trump's Amy, whatever her name is. Oh my gosh. This is going to add fuel to the fire with the right and the left. I know very few people understand the deep state that's going on in here. Look, one of the things with, okay, let's get off Obamacare. That's a whole Pandora's box. And healthcare and all of that. So, let's just go into the issue, which is the other big issue, is the Roe versus Wade and abortion rights. Now, Betty Friedan, even, it was in 1981, I believe, came out and said, look, let's move on beyond abortion rights. And I read something recently, I don't remember where it was exactly, but see, the Republicans at the very, very beginning, they were kind of on board, but they were on board for parental planning, because this did help, regulate your populations, and you do need to do that as a government. Doesn't mean that you go in and create genocides, but you do need to have a policy towards families, which the policy nowadays is, we're all for single mothers amongst the poor and the rich, and it's creating a problem, a serious problem. So I won't get into all of that. You can go into my family courts and all of my research on foster care. One of the Obama's thing to get kids into, I forget what the name of it is right now. Anyway, that goes into all of my research there, and which is based on the research of everybody else. I've done some original research, but very few of it, and most of it is just looking at everybody else and putting it together. Which is where we're lacking leadership at the international level and the national levels. So anyway, okay, here is my letter to Mark. I knew him briefly before I left ICD. He came in a couple months. I don't know, maybe it was 6 or 7 months before I left. He seems very, liberal, and I'm almost positive he's American. He was born in Switzerland, but I'm almost positive he's American. Another death of the liberal class. I mean, everybody's gotten on board, and this goes back into, my days at Foxcroft. I mean, one of my favorite things with my younger sister, during my parents' passing and all those drama. I mean, my Lord, I could write a soap opera on that thing alone. Anyway, she said, "Oh, you never excelled at Foxcroft." I was like, excuse me. I think we actually ended up probably with some scholarship money or something like that, because my parents always owed money. See, this overspending doesn't work anywhere. Indebtedness, a certain amount is fine, but not to the way that everybody's promoting these days. Anyway, she said, "You never excelled at Foxcroft," and I was like, and yeah, rah cheerleading, Cornelia Guest, and I mean, it wasn't only Cornelia Guest, but Cornelia was a definite. She says she, in her Deb of the Decade, How to Be a Debutante, she said she was definitely a Republican. Libertine, totally. Anyway, this is one of the issues. The problems is the Democrats have jumped on board of this whole debutante and party hardy. Chris Hedges gets into that, and the death of the liberal class, and that's true. And I saw it in the United States in the 80s when I came, to Foxcroft, and then DC and the whole Deb BS stuff. That's a sore subject with me. Ooh, yeah, I won't get into that right now. But because I did my coming out in Washington, what was it, 81, 82, I forget. Kind of the same year, but I wasn't rich like Cornelia and had my own thing. It was, one of the, okay. So I won't get into that, because that's something that was forced on me by my Nancy Reagan mother. So God. So, dear Mark, I am contacting you in the interest of diligence and transparency, particularly given the elevated level of lack of diligence, integrity, transparency, and accountability I encountered within the IMF in my 7-year tenure there. Particularly in my 4-year tenure in ICD and 2-year tenure in IMFFA, IMF Family Association. Please find attached a copy of my letter to Hallie Edison due to her responsibility for reviewing women's issues in ICD, as well as a copy of my petition and report, State of the Union during the demise of democracy, to Prince Charles. Also see my letter to my former roommate at Cobham Hall, Lady Henrietta Bathurst, and her brother, a friend of Prince Charles, Earl Bathurst, requesting that they assure Prince Charles receive and read my correspondence. So my well, it's actually kind of a report. It's a 50-page report, which is respectable for me. I know I'm verbose. Everybody wants to play with me, the ignore her till she goes away game. Well, guess what? Then I'm just going to put everything in writing on the board, and when we get to the end of the line, everybody says, oh, I didn't know. I'm like, well, it was in black and white before your nose, and if you don't know how to read, then you should have been fired a long time ago. And if you weren't, the people up above you are responsible. I told everybody from day one, and I forget, it was, it's this Greek, he's with the Greek Orthodox people in D.C., he's some guy who came into Kalari, but I tell this often in my blogs, and I told him, I said, look, everybody, I would be so much more afraid of a lioness guarding her cubs than a lion guarding its prey, or a lioness guarding her prey. These lionesses who have no maternal instinct. Because the lioness guarding her cubs will maul you till the end of the earth. Now, the lion guarding its prey, his $1 million home, his fancy car, his fancy life, you really go up against them, they'll turn tail and run. You're going to see that coming up when all the rats, because the right is self-destructing as much as the left. This goes back into, I've been looking at everything. This goes back into the American Revolution, founding father John Dickinson, John Paul Jones. I'm trying to avoid, really, John Paul Jones. He did not, want war. He really abhorred, and that I saw in this biography that was done with the battle with Serapis and Bonhomme Richard. He was abhorred. He was abhorred by the bloodshed. And, this gets into my domestic violence stuff, because actually John Paul Jones, he was from his father was a gardener at an estate in Scotland. So, this is, at the time, this is would be a middle class type family. And there was a story in the biography that said that they asked, it was a hot house. This was a punishment. And so on one side was the person who had ever done the infraction. And then on the other side was young John Paul. Well, young John. Because it's actually John Paul. John Paul was his name, but he added the Jones because he was pirate. And no, it's for symmetry. And I thought, my Lord, no wonder this poor kid, I've seen that he went at 12 or at 14, joined the British Marines or Navy, or I think it would have been the Marines at the time. That was no walk in the park. if you were going into something like that, your things at home were not too great. See, there is a reason that a lot of the people who go someplace else, whether it be refugees from the violence in their country or from the violence in their home, it's same dynamic. So, what we gotta change is the dynamics. So anyway, my letter to Prince Charles parallels John Dickinson's olive branch petition to King George III, and trying to look for peace. Of course, situations have changed, but principles have not. Now, the enemy, the empire enemy, is within. And I quite frankly, I think Prince Charles will make a very good king. I haven't really followed that. I don't know where that's going. I know his mother is pretty much stepping down. I think he'll make a very good king, and I wish him, well and long reign. And I think, because actually I did, when I was cleaning up, I actually did get a response from his office saying thank you very much. Well, nobody read it, just like in the situation of King George III and not reading the olive branch petition. So, this is an age-old problem of you're only as good as the people who surround you, and many of it is just the lowly person who is reading the mail and processing the mail. And then you got the middle, and then everybody's just been promoting idiots for decades. So, in my correspondence to Prince Charles, I explain how the IMF, along with UN and World Bank, are the motor behind increasing economic instability, extremism, violence, and chaos in the world. Additionally, I explain how the IMF's Institute for Capacity Development, ICD, is nothing other than a $330 million window dressing initiative paid for by taxpayers, designed to cover up for the lack of integrity, transparency, and accountability in finance ministries around the world. Additionally, in my letter, I explain that while ICD's Strategy and Evaluation Division, ICD-SE, and Committee for Capacity Building, CCB, should be providing the analysis that I provide in my coverage of the IMF World Bank spring and annual meetings in 2016. There's also a book. I'm going to do another presentation on that. It's really one of the few books that's out there, very comprehensive on the IMF bailouts. I'll put a link at the end. I can't remember it off the top of my head. But it says basically the same thing that I do from a macro level, whereas I get into more detailed issues which explain how that is happening at their policy levels. So, and that also gets into my letter to the EDs, which was 2017, 2018 as well, about my different issues. For example, David Lipton, Olivia Blanchard, Sharman and Curry. There was also Maed, something like that, who went over to the Center of Policy Development or something like that. Several people that I highlighted. Nimat Shafiq was also mentioned in there. It's not comprehensive. It's just key people that I identified in the different specific issues I was looking at within the IMF, but that do provide some explanation. I mean, of course, it needs to be expanded, but explanation of how all of that, the dynamics, it's the trickle up effect. Because one of the things that Spanish women will tell you, because in Spain they'll always ask you quién manda, when talking about in a couple, in a family. And I was like, well, why is somebody always having to be, ruling? And the women always say, oh, no, the men think that they rule, but we do. And it's the same dynamics. It's really the same dynamics, for example, in the Muslim and even Hindu. Or even the WASP and the Jewish. Everybody does that. I mean, I always told my Jewish friends and my Muslim friends, my Hindu friends, or whoever, whatever nationality, I said, I don't know who cornered the market on the shame game. The Jewish moms, the Catholic moms, the Christian moms, the Muslim moms, the Hindu moms, whatever. Or the heathen moms or whatever. But I was brought up by a Catholic mother. I learned the game, the rules of the shame game very, very, very well, and that's what it's all about. I mean, what do you think the alpha dominance feminists are doing with all of you castrated men and like a cat, like a cat with his tail, and you ring you around and you're making total chaos. I mean, my Lord, I can't even listen to what's going on Capitol Hill. And these, Supreme Court hearing things. It is just all cacophony. Total cacophony. And it's going to come crashing down. I know you don't want to believe me. Nobody wants to believe me. So anyway. But I keep on saying you don't want to believe me, but stop calling me stupid. Stop calling me crazy. I mean, oh Lord, I love that one. Don't even go into that thing. Crazy people are you all. Everybody else in this frickin' cesspool within management. In the restaurants, I tell some of the waiters, I'm like, oh God, yeah, you need management, you need somebody at the helm, but this is such chaos that they do better to just get out of the way and let us do our jobs. Things were bad in the 80s in that industry, but not to the level, as well as within the work, the office workplace up on Capitol Hill, in the financial markets. That's where I both worked. I mean, I can't say things were perfect by any means, but not as crazy as it is today. And that's your alpha dominance feminist, your managerialist, and your affirmative action people who have created that cesspool. So, anyway, but the important experts in the division are too busy schmoozing and cruising, promoting their publications, and grappling up the ladder of success to care about the damage and chaos their negligence is creating. Also, I explain how ICD's Global Partnership Division, ICDGP, is complicit to the damage ICD's trading programs are causing, as it is this division which is responsible for procuring the funding for the window dressing activities of ICD. I mean, I go and time again in the courses, I'm like, excuse me, this is stuff people should be understanding, you know, and this goes with the World Bank, you know, at bachelor levels, and you know, should be like evident for people with MBAs and PhDs. This is not a problem of training. This is a problem of getting competent people in there in the first place. This is what I told Gina peony before I left ICD. You need to get some people in there with brains. And just a bunch of titles. Oh yeah, they can pass tests. They're really good at passing tests. I mean, how many straight A, you know, students do I know when we were young? Because yeah, I'm an old lady, but so are you guys. hate to inform you. Yeah, you want to keep on, you know, telling me what a useless old lady I am, because I'm past my prime, but I opted out of your workplace, but I didn't opt out of life. In fact, one of my favorite films is Auntie Mame, and her the line of life is a banquet and most poor suckers are starving to death. I understood that in the 80s. Yeah, I opted out of the game, but I never opted out of life, which is what most of you guys have done. Your consumerism and your shopping and your jet setting and your affairs, and I mean, Washington is just a cesspool. A cesspool. All anybody is looking for. During my attendance of the CCB and pre-CCB meetings in October and November 15th, before being ousted from the IMF by Queen for a Day game playing Adrienne Thapa, see my Huffington Post blogs and report workplace bullying in the IMF, I was dismayed to see that the only thing dozens of highly important IMF experts were doing, with a slew of support staff bowing and scraping to them at great expense to taxpayers, was counting the number of training and technical assistance programs delivered to countries around the world. I mean, done Excel spreadsheet. During my attendance of one of the many pre-CCB meetings, the director of ICD-SE, Robert Powell, asked what everyone thought of the presentation. I responded, "Good, I understood everything." Wasn't good what I understood, but I understood everything. And I always say, if those in your audience who know nothing about your subject matter understand what you are talking about, you've done a good job. he condescendingly responded, "It was not meant for you," the idiot, to understand. I mean, the entire time I worked, I was only there, thank God, for a couple of months. That was the end. And I mean, you talk about your misogynistic white supremacist. I mean, Mark Lewis is, I think I even saw that there was a Matt Taibbi or something tweet on his Twitter account years ago. So, liberal facade, just as much as a white supremacist as Robert Powell, at least doesn't hide his game. I mean, he even told me to take something down, about Trump, or, don't vote for Trump or something, because he said, some people might be offended because they like it. Well, that pretty much told me where he was on the, I'm sure nowadays he would deny that he was a Trump supporter, but I know he was. So, what the misogynistic, male supremacist, and ardent Trump supporter Powell fails to understand is that I am far from the idiot that all the condescending seat warmers and experts in the IMF I've been rubbing shoulders with for 7 years would like to believe, and have tried so desperately to make me believe with their continual bullying and condescensions. I've been the target of this kind of bullying my entire life, precisely because I am not an idiot, and I see through everyone's BS and know that they are threatened by my perceptiveness. My father, everybody in my siblings and my mother did the same thing to my father his entire life for the same reasons. I grew up with all of these tactics and stuff, and even, I spent a lifetime not trying to perpetuate it on my children and understand it, to get over the anger that it produces, for sure. Oh my God. I mean, everybody in my family, it's like, stop hating this person, stop hating that person for this or that, because it just destroys you, but nobody understands. I mean, that's, sometimes you gotta separate yourself and save yourself if nobody else wants to. And a bunch of IMF eggheads who failed to see the 2008 financial collapse coming, as well as the present one, will hardly intimidate me with their games, bullying tactics, and ostracization. I am very interested in examining exactly what the windy dressing ICD SE results-based management RBM project officer the longer the title, sometimes the less power you have, has produced in the past year at taxpayers' expense. A job for which I am highly and uniquely qualified to fill, but was not even accorded an interview along with my application for SPM of ICD when Gina peony left. Oh, I've been applying for jobs and jobs, documenting how I've been ostracized when I left the HR woman said, "Oh yeah, you're not let back in for a cooling off period." And I said to her, I said, "Ooh la, why would anybody need a cooling off period?" And I tried to get her from her in writing, but at least the idiot was not stupid enough to put it in writing. But then I later saw it posted on one of the job applications that I applied for, and I grabbed the image, and it's there. It's an 8-year cooling off period. Well, now, that is just admission of guilt from the IMF HR that they're covering up for all of the bullying and all of the mismanagement problems within the IMF instead of dealing with them. This is what I go into time and time and time again. All you narcissists and psychopaths who have taken power, you don't know how to deal with any problems, so you just keep on sweeping it on the carpet. And doesn't matter at the national levels, at the international levels. So, anyway. Not only does the former SPM of ICD, Gina Peony, need to be investigated for her mismanagement of ICD funds and personal traveling at taxpayers' expense while in ICD, and I'm sure before that, and I think she was in UNESCO. But she also needs to be investigated for negligence in her current position in IMF HR as Division Chief, Talent Acquisition and Operations. As I said, when I left ICD, I said, Gina, you need to hire people with a brain, first and foremost. Oh, now it's she. Oh my gosh! When I saw her video, doing good in the world. Oh my Lord! If I had a clip of everybody in the international community who inserts that into their spiels, I think we have a 50-hour, doing good in the world, doing good in the world. No, no, you're just closing your eyes. And then in the digital age, so this is once again how IMF and the international community are just in bed with techie liberalism, with Bill Gates is I would say probably at the helm, not alone, but certainly at the helm. And I saw some postings that were pretty extreme, and most of it was just like, whoa, guys. However, see, this is the thing. Just because people come out there with stuff that you think is like totally, what? You can't discount everything that people are saying. You have to listen with an open mind. There was a lot of stuff that, like Rush Limbaugh, like the feminist, like Trump, like Nancy Pelosi, like everybody out there, they'll take certain truths or facts and then go off on all sorts of tangents. And that's where it's important to regard evidence and sift through the facts from the fiction. And that's what none of you, oh my Lord, none of you know how to do. And those within, the IMF, World Bank, UN, government agencies, when your paychecks are coming from taxpayers or even shareholders, you don't do your job. I'm sorry. Did the old college try? Doesn't cut it. Doesn't cut it. And that's got to stop. So, Gina Peony is typical HR, alpha dominance, managerialist, affirmative action, politically correct. As I say to these guys that would come into Kalari, I said to one guy, I said, look, you ever see an HR person coming at you with a packet of papers and a work plan and an acronym, a new acronym? Turn tail and run as fast as you freaking can. They're crazy. They're absolutely crazy. And this is really one of the big divides that everybody in the workplace is going to have to decide. You can, because this is where I'm going, I would say, full armament, how shall I say, it was the Japanese, the Pearl Harbor. It was the Americans, Hiroshima or Nagasaki. Sorry, Hiroshima or Nagasaki. So I guess this is my Hiroshima, Nagasaki, against the feminist and the cacophony that the HR people are creating. So I guess my message for everybody out there is there's only two sides on this war, because it is a war. Ask Pascalon, who was at the IMF Family Association when he would come in, and I would keep the place open. And that was just at the very, very beginning. This was 2009, 2010. He said to me, he said, you sound like you are going to war. And I said, you damn freaking straight I am. You take my children. You take everything from me. You beat me down. You leave me with no dignity. You leave me with, you want to destroy me. Oh, Lord. Oh, Lord. This is what the Founding Fathers were about. Give me life or give me liberty. And no. I mean, of course, I've never, I can do body combat. I'm pretty good at body combat at the gym. So I've tried to demonstrate, through my argumentation. And it was actually in 2016 when my dad was talking to me about telling me all about the family with John Dickinson, John Paul Jones. I even got into the Quaker movement, and to hide. The time that he would talk to any of us, he had to hide because my mom didn't want him, power and control, keep him locked up. You men, really, the alpha dominance, feminist, and bitches of the world are taking over. The crazy bitches. Oh gosh, what's her name? Joan Crawford. That's who's taking over. Instead, wasn't it Betty Davis or something who was a great broad? You need to empower the great broads of the world, not the crazy, all about Eve and bitches, which you've done. So, See, this is why a lot of women were kept out of the workplace and out of positions of power, because they're worse than the men when they get in. So in my blogs covering the IMF World Bank spring and annual meetings, as well as in response to Sean Penn's Rolling Stones article, El Chapo Speaks and U.S. Election in 2016, I exposed the many issues the IMF, World Bank, and UN and press I've been after from the beginning. This is either got to come from the press or the legal community. If they don't step up, and this is why these have been my focuses from the very beginning with all of the advocates, and I know they're like, they don't want to expose another case, expose another drama. I'm like, how many more dramas do we need? Focus on the problems in the courts and the obligation for oversight. Judicial independence doesn't mean, oh God, they were bringing up this stuff on judicial independence with the Supreme Court hearings. Judicial independence doesn't mean, excuse me, but you can do whatever the F you want in that court. The Supreme Court, I got on point. I have a really good book here because one of my issues is examining exactly what the Supreme Court is looking at. How can all this crap be happening in the lower courts and the Supreme Court is structured so nobody will examine it? I still have a lot of questions. As I say that, I haven't been able to get into, because I've been looking at everything at internet, universal jurisdiction, and national levels, and the results of national levels. So, for me, the gap, yes, I know, but it's not a gap because of lack of good faith and wanting to look at it. It's a gap because I don't have the resources to do that. Oh my God, I'm only one person. I'm not frickin' Wonder Woman. And, I wish I even told the guy downstairs. I said, my God, when I was little, my favorite show on TV was Bewitched. My mom always had us cleaning and cleaning and cleaning and cleaning, and I'm going. And I always thought, oh my God, the best thing in the world would be house is clean and I can get on to my other stuff. I can get down to this table. I can get down, wherever, to my friends or whatever. But unfortunately, I grew up. Not like most people I know, and I realized that magic wands don't exist. And little twinkles of noses don't. It may get rid of a fly that's going around there, but nothing else. So, but since the experts in these organizations are too busy convincing themselves of their own self-worth and importance, oh my God, the inflated egos in Washington these days is even worse than in the 80s. When I was in my prawn and still fresh meat and of interest, but I was like, my Lord, give me an intelligent, honorable man. That's one of the reasons why I left. Anyway, they are failing to examine issues from a holistic intersectional approach and see the big picture. Jim Yong Kim, Ban Ki-moon, and Antonio Guterres are very vocal in calling for the paradigm shift that I am promoting in my activism work. Unfortunately, old guard staff and their organizations are not only failing to transform their rhetoric to reality, but they are silencing and oppressing the only one who is willing and able to do so. Yours truly. I know, I'm just a stupid, deposed trophy wife, pissed off mom. But guess what? Sometimes that's what makes the difference in the world. If you look at history, I mean, I know you're Mark Lewis, you're a poli-sci major, so I know your expertise is not history, and this is one of the problems. You guys can't look at other domains or what's going on in the world, or you're all up on your little pedestals and ivory towers. So, journalists like Thomas Friedman should be writing code red articles about those in the IMF, World Bank, and UN who are a danger to democracies around the world by their erratic behavior and incompetence, and in support of the usurpation of the Trump administration. Now, I remember this was this was so many years ago. Reports were coming out of Silicon Valley and the elevated level of psychopathologies that are going on there. Same things happen in Washington. Same things happen when I got back to Washington. And this I told Lucy Herman at the Stanford Law Public Lab or something like that. I've known her from Arizona. She was my older sister's best friend. And it's like, with older sisters and best friends and a family like that, who needs enemies? At least it taught me Machiavellian games. It's just gotta stop. So anyway, as highlighted in my letter to Prince Charles and Earl Bathurst, if King George III had been willing to read and consider the First Continental Congress's petition to the King and John Dickinson's olive branch petition, then the American Revolution and much bloodshed might have been avoided. Another in my family tree, Thomas Wilcox, sent a similar message and petition to Queen Elizabeth I in 1572 with publication of Admonitions to Parliament, aka Puritan Manifesto. However, instead of heeding the words of Wilcox, he was sent to the Tower of London and ostracized by British clergy for the rest of his life. Hopefully, after 500 years of people in my family tree, my father and grandfather included, challenging the predatory and dysfunctional paradigm started by the expansionism of Queen Elizabeth I and the British Empire, the British Crown will finally start heeding our words and reverse the destructive trajectory of the planet and its people. My calls for good governance, inequality under the law, are no different than the principles my family has been fighting for and advocating for centuries. As I told Holger Flokmeyer in the summer of 2015, I know many wealthy and powerful people around the world and would have been happy to use my contacts in assisting GP procuring funding for its training programs. Until I attended the IMF spring meetings in 2016, that is. During my attendance of those meetings, covered in my blog's observation of a CSO rep at the IMF World Bank 2016 meetings, I was dismayed to observe how IMF policies and training are the motor behind increasing economic instability caused in large part by unbridled greed and corruption in banking systems, financial markets, and business communities. IMF policies which promote full financial inclusion and strengthen government's tax collection were of particular concern to me in my analysis of topics discussed during the meetings, due to the fact that they enable the predatory and greedy banking practices and risky financial investing which dominate markets to funnel more and more savings and earnings of workers into the hands of the 1% elite. Additionally, strengthening tax collection by governments without first addressing the rampant problem of negligence, corruption, and stupidity of workers in government agencies only enable and empowers these agencies to exploit and oppress their citizens. So I won't get into the rest of the letter. It's there. It starts page 3. It's a 10-page letter. It goes into other stuff. But that's basically, for example, that's really, I would say, the crux of my issue against Mark Lewis. And I even called him. As I said, I felt bad because I had, barely knew him when I left ICD. And then what I saw in the spring 2016 meetings, what was going on, and did this case analysis with Turkey, and I've always been very, very pro-European Union, and always hoped that Turkey would get into the European Union, and I've always been very observant on that, and very politically incorrect in Europe I'm as politically incorrect in Europe amongst the 10%ers as I am in the United States or probably elsewhere in the world. But, I've seen it all from a different perspective. So, I was there at the christening of the Fourth Reich. So, I definitely, of course I have a different perspective. And if you look into everything that I've written, I'm not off the mark. Just, stop calling me stupid and tell me where I'm off my mark, and then I got no problem. But you call me stupid or fat or ugly, well, then I got a problem. I'm old. Yeah, I put on too many pounds with all you guys and all your games. But compared to most people my age. And stupid, sorry, that one just doesn't fly at all, so whatever. Whatever, this is the problem, the cacophony of the that's come in with alpha dominance feminists. All you people know how to do is attack people personally. You never address them in the issues. But, so this, going back to what my issue was with Mark Lewis and Res Rep of Turkey, then he was also mission chief of Cyprus, and I saw with the working papers of Turkey over a 10-year period, how, you had the financial inclusion, strengthening of government's taxes, you had increase of GNP, which is only done in a predatory manner, consumerism, you have predatory banking systems that are totally out of control because it's not just a question of proper legislation and regulation, it's a problem of idiot regulators. I went through this in my case against the Spanish government. I didn't have time to go through it all with the American, for example, with my fight with the DC landlord tenant court, but I had already done that so much beforehand. I was like, ditto. And, people up on Capitol Hill, the NGOs in DC, the think tanks in DC, I mean, up the wazoozy. I mean, in France, it's a go-go. So, of course, if you have these corrupt systems, you strengthen tax collection, but it's only used to produce more and more, bigger and bigger incompetent government, well, that becomes more and more predatory and hires more and more security and police and military to keep down populations that are being oppressed by all of the idiots in the agencies. The international community is just, added another layer of incompetent idiots. So, that was one of my big issues with what I saw in the 2016 spring meetings. I mean, there was, he's a Portuguese guy, I forget his name, he's over one of the heads over at the IMF. Nice guy, intelligent, but again, up in his ivory tower. All of them are. I think it's a good faith. David Lipton, it's another story. And I have no problem. David Lipton wants to get on a podium and debate any of this stuff with me. I got no issue with that. I have no issue with that. Christine Lagarde, Sharmini Curry, Mark Lewis, Robert Powell. But of course, you all won't give me a voice because you're too afraid. You don't like what I have to say, so y'all shut me up. I mean, see, as long as you remain politically correct amongst the extreme right that's taken control, or politically correct with the extreme left that's taken control, you're giving it a voice. If you want to give a voice to the center and try and bring some clarity, if not sanity, I think I can bring clarity but not sanity without some people on board to what's going on from top to bottom. See, old ladies are not totally useless in society if they haven't been spending their entire life at the frickin' shopping mall and country club. Believe me. Ask James, my bodyguard in Colombia. He always said, I love going to the supermarket with you. I've never seen a woman who can get in and out so fast. And if my ex wanted to go to the supermarket, it was usually Carrefour. I just tapped James on the shoulder whenever I would hear that from my ex. I mean, on the weekends. And he would be, no, ya lo sé, señor, ya lo sé. It was, leave me at home first. I can, be with my kids. I can work on my jewelry. I can, do whatever. Or I can cook or whatever. Because I am not spending 2 hours in a stupid supermarket shopping. And I would tell him, I said, James, you get paid for this. I don't. Take me home. And he would just laugh. So, There are women out there who have spent their time other than, schmoozing and cruising and amusing themselves. And as I told these guys, the pompous police officers at the White House with their stupid wall that they're producing there, and I told them, I said, you know what? I know all of my compatriots, all my former classmates, all of the other ruling elite around the world, because I've seen it, it's the same thing everywhere I go. They may not have been watching, but I've been watching. Like what for the letter for the blog for the EDs, I used the from Ed Scott Fitzgerald's Great Gatsby, and the publicity board of the eyes watching over what was going on. I've been watching, and I don't like what I see. And I know I'm just one little voice, but is in the emperor who's wearing the new clothes of the emperor, whatever it's called. Just take one voice of a child that's given a voice and say, these people are buck naked. There's nothing there to change it all. So have a nice day.